After 7 years, Daredevil is back, and I'm very excited to talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your thoughts on Daredevil Born Again. This is a spoiler-free review. I do plan on posting a spoiler review. Please save any spoilers for the other review, or put big, gigantic spoiler warnings if you want to leave a comment discussing some of those subjects down below. And give me kind of that point of reference. What's your experience with Daredevil comics, with Daredevil TV show, all of that fun stuff. As for me, Netflix Daredevil was pretty much my favorite show of the last decade. I covered the Marvel Netflix universe on my channel in the early era of this channel, very early on in this channel, extensively, and was pretty well heartbroken when it was canceled. So when they decided that they were going to actually start to merge officially all of that over into the MCU, I was ecstatic. In fact, the way that it worked out for me is that I saw the Hawkeye episode where Wilson Fisk showed up the same day that I watched Spider-Man No Way Home, where Charlie Cox showed up, and I was watching Spider-Man No Way Home. So that was a pretty great day for me as a fan of Marvel and Daredevil. But with this new show, there's been a lot of ups and downs. They say, hey, we're going to do a new season of Daredevil. Yes! And then they hired like the writers of Covert Affairs, some show that nobody watches or nobody ever watches. Like, what? Who did you hire? And there was just a lot of things they said that were red flags. And then, as you are well aware, they got to a certain point in time in filming and they went, this is not good. And apparently, the actors themselves were voicing concerns. Vincent D'Onofrio's made tweets making that pretty clear. But also, I know someone that talked to John Bernthal at a Comic-Con before the reset, and they said he very clearly was not happy with what was going on with the new version of the show. So they did this gigantic overhaul, fired all of the morons that were doing whatever they were doing before, and brought in people that actually worked on the Marvel Netflix shows and course corrected. Did what was, obviously they should have done in the first place, which was make this a continuation of what came before. If this is not a continuation of what came before, all you're really doing is treating Charlie Cox as a fan cast. That's all it really is. If you're going to do Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, we want those actual characterizations and to continue their journey. So they did that. The trailers looked good. The buzz seemed good. It seemed like they course corrected, but was that actually true? Today's video is brought to you by Factor. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition for this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes. This year I've been trying to eat a lot better and work out more. Factor makes it so much easier and it's so much quicker to eat something that tastes great that also fits in my diet. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience you can't beat. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, choose between things like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. I either go with Keto or Protein Plus because I'm a high protein, low carb kind of guy. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab and go snacks, and more add-ons. I like their protein smoothies to kick off my day, once again, because I really like protein. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Let's get started with the review. So I've seen the first 4 episodes of the season. Critics were sent the entire season. A lot of people, their reviews will be of all 9 episodes because critics were sent, and I was sent all 9 episodes. But as someone that's been waiting 7 years for more of Daredevil, I just didn't want to burn through it in a weekend. Like, I just to get a video out, just so that this review could cover the whole thing. I didn't want to do that. Like, I'm passionate passionate and excited enough about this that I wanted time to savor it and enjoy it. And just as a fan, I wanted to watch it at least half of the season the same way that you're watching it. Week to week, being a part of that conversation with that anticipation of like, what's going to happen next? And you have those cliffhangers. I wanted to be a part of that. That'll bring us back to what did I actually think about the season? And after 4 episodes, if it continues at its current pace, it will easily be, without question, the best Disney Plus Marvel TV show that they have done. Now, I'm not as high on Loki as some other people are. I'm very positive on it, but I'm not quite as high as some other people. But like on just a pure taste level, what I'm into, characters that I love, this to me, if it continues, if it lands the ship, and all the people, everything I've heard about people who have watched the whole season have indicated it does, pretty safe to say I think this is easily the best Disney Plus season that they have delivered. And kind of going back to the original concept that it wasn't going to be a continuation at first, and then they said, no, of course it needs to be. As soon as you watch it, it's very clear right out of the gate, this is continuing, building off everything that came before. But equally true is that it has its own personality. It has its own flavor, its own vibe. Kind of aesthetically, it's a little bit different. Characters are in a different place in life. Sometimes they're quite literally in different places. And so it changes up the dynamics. The supporting cast is different. But all of the key ingredients, everything that kind of made the original iteration of this show something I loved, is present in this new version. It's adjusted. There are ways in which it kind of fits more in line with the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, as it is officially part of the MCU. No strings attached, no asterisks. It is just straight up Marvel Studios MCU. And so there's some adjustments made there, but it's very much true to what came before. So like on a tone level, it is very dark. And it makes this abundantly clear from the opening sequence that this is not the Disney-ified version of Daredevil. It's not the watered-down version. It's the same dark show where bad people do bad things. And when bad things happen and hurt people, and it takes our characters to dark places. It is still a show that is filled with just these long dialogue scenes. There was a quote that came out a few weeks ago from the showrunner where he talked about, on the original show, there was like so much navel gazing about what does it mean to be a hero, and we're trying to move away from that. I don't know what he was trying to say in that quote or what he was implying about their show versus his show. That's all still there, and that's a positive. Just like in the first episode, there's like Matt is dealing with the weight of this journey that he's been on, and what does it mean to actually save this city that he loves so much, with all the consequences that come along with it. It's very character based, where you're dealing with when big things happen. How does everyone respond to it? And how do two people that care deeply about one another, but they can hurt one another in their grieving? And it deals with that in a human, organic way. If you've gone through life, you've gone through these phases where there's people you're so close with, and just something happens and you can't really quite sort through it. It's messy. Because life is messy. In this show, as much as it has a blind guy that has super hearing that makes it so he can see stuff, it understands humans. Just like the original one understood humans, this one understands humans. And therefore you can have these long scenes of dialogue that are so compelling and so interesting. And because you care about the characters, but they ring true. They feel authentic. So, of course, at the center of it are our two leads, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, who haven't missed a beat here. 7 years may have passed, but they are just right back in line with their performances from before, but also their chemistry with one another. But because time has passed, but because things have happened in each of their lives. And like if you haven't seen Hawkeye and Echo, you might not know exactly what's up with Fisk, but you understand something happened that kind of took him on a path. Like, you don't need to know the specifics. If you want the backstory, there's 2 TV shows that will fill in the gaps, but they're in very different places. And everything that has happened since has made them a little bit different and made their interactions a little bit different. And if you've seen the trailers, this isn't a spoiler or anything like that, but Wilson Fisk is now very much involved in politics and trying to do his part to, in his own way, he wants to save his city, and he's trying to serve his city through politics now. And Matt, in kind of this very broken state that he's in kind of throughout this season, actually pretty much throughout Matt's life, he's a pretty broken guy. Like, he's trying to figure out and process everything that he's done and all that is done to the people around him. Speaking of Matt, by day, he is a lawyer, and this show leans very, very heavily into that aspect of the character, where it goes back and forth between being kind of political thriller, lawyer, procedural, and crime fighter show. It's kind of intertwining all of those together because that's the world of our lead characters. And so, in particular, in the second episode, he's very much lawyer guy and kind of trying to unpack something that happened in the city. And like, even those aspects are compelling because Matt is on this journey to help people. And if that means fighting crime, he does that. And if that means like taking on cases that everyone else rejects, that's what he's going to do. And so you kind of have all of those different kind of elements of Matt present in the show. Once again, doesn't feel like they watered it down or just turned it into an action show. It feels like a continuation of what came before. Now, I'll say this, not everything was a full-blown positive for me. I mean, my overall feelings on it are extremely positive. There are a few things that I was less enthusiastic about. A big one is the action itself, where some of this is that they're trying to be truer to the comics with just the true acrobatic, flippy through the air, swing by the rope, Daredevil. And they're bringing in some of those aspects that weren't in the original show. You did see them when he appeared in She-Hulk, and so they bring that kind of heightened action that uses CGI into the world of this show, and I don't think it looks great. And I think it stands out. Like, you're watching a show that most everything that happens feels normal, grounded, and then you see kind of a CGI, rubbery-looking Matt Murdock swing around a building real quick and then get in a fight. I wasn't too crazy about that. Like, that's not for the better. And I can see they're trying to do their own thing, and we're moving towards the MCU. The MCU is a world with aliens and robots and all this. Okay, all right. So you want to enhance our Daredevil to match that. That makes sense. It doesn't look great. They didn't find the way to pull that off, or I went, that was awesome. I saw it and I went, ooh, that didn't work. The point of reference that came to mind when I was talking to Cody Leach, he goes, reminded me of Blade 2. It's like, yeah, it like has that 20 years ago CGI characters where it's like cutting between CGI character, real person, and you can tell which is CGI and which one is the stunt person in Charlie. Like, fights use CGI people all the time, but you can't tell because it's seamless. Here, there's just something that's very unnatural cutting into a guy on the ground going like this. So it wasn't crazy about that. It's specifically with the Daredevil fights. There's a lot of Matt fighting outside of the suit at the beginning of the season. And those ones are just like brutal, bone-snapping, blood-spraying, not the rubbery stuff. But in the Daredevil stuff, in particular, when you kind of first see it at the beginning, I didn't think it looked great. I don't know if it gets what that's like later in the season, but at the beginning, it did not look great. Kind of to that point, this isn't a good or a bad thing. There's not a lot of Daredevil in the first 4 episodes of Daredevil Born Again. The whole plot and journey of the show is him re-exploring being Daredevil. Like, something happens that kind of makes him kind of lose his way, and so it's kind of a story of him being born again. That is the literal premise of the show, and so you don't see a lot of Daredevil, and there is a lot of courtroom. I don't necessarily mean that as a negative, but you do need to know that going in. Likewise, in terms of Matt Murdock and our characterization, the Catholicism isn't as overt. I saw some tweets saying the religious themes are gone. That's false. They're absolutely still there. In the first episode, there's a part where Matt pauses to explain how grace is important to him, how he believes that we can be touched by a higher force and be made right. Like, he says that, like, very Christian beliefs, and grace, very Christian word. He goes to church at one point in time, but also it's not as overt as it used to be, where many episodes had him just sitting in a church with a priest, battling through his faith. It's not as overt as that. It is absolutely still there. So if you really love the Catholic elements, just know they're maybe dialed back, but they are still present in the show. Couple other things to kind of discuss in here. I don't really like the look of the show. Or maybe to phrase it, I don't know what cameras they used on the Netflix one. That's not really my area of expertise, but I have been rewatching Daredevil and Defenders, and hopping over to this show, there's very obviously a change in the nature of the camera and the look of the show. While they both still kind of have the highly stylized coloring and the back shading, gradiating, things like that, this show, without knowing what cameras they used, have that digital camera look, where a lot of digital cameras right now, the technology's gotten so good that they just pick up like too much detail in the shadows. So things that are dark, you can see too much, so something dark doesn't actually seem as dark as it should be. And so it just looks cheaper. It doesn't have a cinematic look where there's this strong contrast between light and dark, shadows, things like that. And I think whenever you see that, it just, I think your just eyes it doesn't look as good. It doesn't look as expensive. And it felt cheaper to me than what we got before with the show, the previous version of the show. And the final one to talk about on here is that with kind of the change of where they're at in life and who's around everyone, I think you do you feel the shift in the supporting cast. The dialogue's just as strong, the politics, the writing, the complexity of storytelling, where it's episodic, but there's all these elements that tie into a bigger mystery of what's kind of happening all in the town. Again, it's all of that, but there's just certain supporting characters or dynamics on each side with our characters that there were elements there in the past that there were more familiar faces that you really enjoyed to see throughout the whole episodes. And this show is designed to be this show right here. It's designed to be the Matt and Wilson show, whereas the original version felt like a much more of an ensemble that, right out of the gate, Wilson had Wesley, and Wesley was this major part of the show that was driving so much of it. And that the way that he interacted there was so important to so much of what was happening. And you don't have some of that, I don't feel, right now in the same way, or not as compelling. And maybe by the end of the season, we spent a long time in the previous version with the cast that was over there. And so by the end of the season, maybe that will play out. But it feels more kind of like there's kind of stand-in people that are supporting cast, but they're not as pivotal in the lives of Matt and Wilson as our previous supporting cast felt. Real quick before I give you my final thoughts, remember to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know, what did you think about the season? Also, I am planning on doing a spoiler review, so if you want me to unpack all the spoilery stuff in there, and obviously there's some big spoilery things to unpack with these first 2 episodes, stick around until I think tomorrow. I'll drop that pretty early on in the day. Also, you can check out my thoughts on the Marvel Netflix stuff somewhere around here. While I've got my issues with kind of the way that it's lit and with the way some of the fighting is done, it gets all of the most important things right. As someone that adored the original run of the show, this is a worthy follow-up. I'm very excited to see the rest of the season. And really, that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to just binge through the entire thing in a couple of days. I wanted time to savor it, enjoy it, and experience it with you as you're watching it in the final few episodes of the season. I want to be a part of that with you because I do think that they did it right. They're giving us the show that we wanted, and I'm very, very happy about it. Be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Come back for that spoiler review for my thoughts on all of the big, bold stuff. And even as I was doing this review, I had to dance around a few really important things that happened in the show. So be sure to check out the spoiler review when that one drops. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much.